Welcome back to Track Talk. This is Game F of the ongoing 1830 tournament. We have Devouring Trey, who's a familiar face from the 1830 League we've been covering, so good luck to them. We have Kelly, Kirkulon, and Dovebar. We'll jump into the auction. Devouring Trey is leading it off, and we'll be going for the Camden and Amboy. Kelly going for the D and H. Kirkulon, an early bid on the Champlain and St. Lawrence, so he's a little bit cautious with that. Could lead to an early pull. Dovebar following on the Camden and Amboy. Devouring Trey gets the M and H and Kelly actually pulls. So let's back that up for a second. Kelly gets the D&H for almost face. Kirkulon gets the Champlain and St. Lawrence for almost face. Devouring Trey gets M&H. Um, I guess the biggest winner of that is Devouring Trey, right? Like it's the highest value private. Your return on investment is going to be the best with that. So not entirely sure why Kelly pulled there, but it was only made possible by Kirkulon's bid on the Champlain and St. Lawrence. We will see here the Camden and Amboy is up for auction. And looking at the upcoming Baltimore and Ohio, that's going to come down to Kirkulon and Dovebar, it looks like. Dovebar, if he wins the Camden and Amboy, will be safe, so is rather incentivized to bid this up. All right. This is another reason why the Champlain and St. Lawrence early bid is kind of ill-advised, because you can find yourself in this situation where even though you have a decent private income, you end up being forced to buy the B&O. We'll see if that actually happens or not. Camden and Amboy goes up to 230, reasonable price. Dovebar wins as expected. Hard for Devouring Trey to really press it too far. It would be over privatized otherwise. And Kirkulon is going to pass. This is his B&O, so we'll see if anybody gives him any out here. Doesn't look like it. Everybody gets income. The income doesn't change anybody's ability to float. I'm not going to do the math, but it's conceivable that someone gets an extra share as a result of that. But we'll leave that to the viewer to determine. And then Kirkulon buys the B&O. So passes once unnecessarily. Everybody gets a little leg up on him as a result, but does take it in the end. Dovebar with the CNA has enough to float the PRR and does so. Floats it at 76. Devouring Trey going to take the NY and H. Okay. And Kelly rounds us out on the C and O. Kirkulon, not enough to float the B&O, so is going to spread his cash, it looks like. Just buying one share in each of the floated companies. This does allow the other players to diversify their investments as well, so we'll see pretty split investment in these companies. Looks like Kelly ends up with priority. We're into the operating round, and Dovebar is leading us off on the PRR. He's heading east, buys a single 2 train. NYNH lays towards the B&M. We've been seeing a lot of that on the channel recently. Nobody's heading towards the NYC. Buys a single 2 train. C&O laying pretty atypical track. Instead of heading west towards Chicago, is heading south towards Columbus. We'll have to monitor that and see where he goes from there. I think probably the strictly best opening for the C&O is heading towards Chicago. I don't really see any reason to deviate from that, but let's monitor this as it plays out. C&O sticking with a single 2 train as well. Kelly and Kirkulon with enough cash for shares if they want it. Kelly does buy it. Kirkulon is going to pass and hope to end up with priority, and does. OR2, PRR gets into Lancaster, drops the token, pays NYNH, does lay the Providence track, only bought 1 2 train, so a little bit surprised to see that. Not going to be, that lightning fast start that we see for the NYNH sometimes, but does have the downside of that track cost. Not going to drop the token at least, and he's actually withholding. Okay. All right, we'll see what happens there. C&O heading towards Columbus as expected. Runs the 2 for 50, so $20 less than he should have had, and buys a second 2 train. The whole nice thing about the C&O is that you get to run a single 2 train for $70. Now you got 2 2 trains, and you're running for less. It looks like when he eventually gets into the Gulf, he'll run for 100, so $30 extra revenue for $80 worth of train. And it's also extra track points. Okay, we'll keep watching that. Stock round, Kirkulon is going to go for his B&O. It looks like that is now floated, so this may give us the opportunity to see 3 trains in OR3. Dovebar is buying the C&O, less attractive than usual, but still set up for a $100 run potentially. And Devouring Trey's passing, probably hoping for priority. Kelly messes that up for him by selling a B&O and buying the C&O. Devouring Trey says, okay, well, I'm either third or fourth, might as well buy a share. And then Kelly buys a share too, so it doesn't cost Devouring Trey anything in priority. Kelly's still taking actions, not really sure what this player's doing. Sold one B&O, took a hit on stock value, and then sells the second one. And looks like they will go back for a PRR. Okay. So not a believer in the B&O. Not sure why they bought those shares to begin with, to be honest. B&O heading down south and buys into the threes. Doesn't have privates really to buy, but probably was worried about missing out on the threes entirely if they don't get one here. Probably not a high risk of that actually happening, but he has been trashed, so he's floating or operating later than you would usually expect with the B&O. I suppose it's possible someone could float over him and bring out the fours before he was able to run. Conservative play, can't fault it. Buys the CSTL. So Kerkulon actually did have a private. How is that the case? Oh, I remember. He bought the Champlain and St. Lawrence, so was forced into the B&O. Okay, so did have a private to buy in. Makes more sense to buy the 3 then. A little less painful. Does open up Lancaster for green, which is immediately upgraded to block the B&O. PRR is running for 40 now. Buys the 3, buys the expensive CNA. Good start for Dove Bar. CNO gets into the Gulf, has to token Columbus, and runs for 100. So we've talked about this before, but he's now spent 3 track points, made no progress east, which is where eventually you want to end up, has dropped a token, and all this is to run for 100 instead of 70. Doesn't seem good. Yeah, I'm going to stick with my instincts here and say that the better opening for the Cleveland CNO is to just head towards Chicago. Yeah, I think that's pretty clear. Buys the 3, buys in his privates, does have the option of teleporting, so maybe that'll be the saving grace for this company. He'll teleport and not need to worry about laying on this track as a result. We'll see. NYNH upgrades his home and buys in expensive private. Does buy the 3, so everybody's protected. Nobody should be falling back. Kerkulon's up in stock round 4, buys an NYNH. Dove Bar pretty close to floating and is going to sell out to pretty much max par the NYC. Okay. NYC and PRR. Potential for synergy in Lancaster if the NYC is able to rush down there, but there's going to be some interference from the NYNH player that could mess that up for him. Strong combo if it works out, though. Devouring Trey also looks like he's floating a company, so going for the B&M. Reasonable synergy with the NYNH, especially when he's already laid that Providence track, so good news for him. Kelly selling out very heavily of the CNO. Really hasn't made that company very attractive, so probably hoping to run that with a minimal presidency. And then he's going to float the Erie. Okay. Kerkulon, buying paying shares. Dove Bar, floating. Devouring Trey, also floating. And looks like he's selling just to raise the cash for the float. Kelly floating as well. So should be a float fest here. Kerkulon's still doing some shenanigans and buying cheap shares that have been sold down. A little bit of efficiency there. Good. Dove Bar still working on the NYC. Devouring dumps the NYNH. Okay. So I guess he figures he's gotten what he needs out of the NYNH in terms of track development for the B&M and buying in his private. Doesn't want that presidency or train liability anymore. I don't think that's the wrong thought, but it is a little bit unfortunate that he withheld on the NYNH that one time. He's now, instead of being ledged, he's actually in brown. So that makes the dump a lot more tolerable for Kerkulon. He's going to buy some paying shares here, but eventually will be floating the B&M, I believe. Kelly still floating the Erie. Kerkulon buying those cheap brown shares. Probably should sell some other shares and just really max out his NYNH investment. Dove Bar almost floated. Devouring Tray, almost floated. And looks like Herculon is not going to sell shares to buy the NYNH. We see the NYC float. Erie is floated, and B&M is floated. Devouring Tray still with cash. Does he want to put his cash anywhere else? He's going to buy a CNO. Okay, could steal that presidency. Has the cash to do it. The CNO is not in the greatest position on the map, but a 30% presidency with a 3 train, tempting. He is instead going to buy an Erie share. I don't like that. All right, so this is not great from Devouring here. I think this is pretty risky. Doesn't steal the CNO. Not open to a dump in theory because the market is open, but he doesn't control what this company does. So Kelly's sitting on, a 20% presidency, can just withhold, feed cash into the Erie or prepare for the late game, and Devouring has got, 130 something dollars invested here for no real benefit. Yeah, I don't know. All right, Kelly on the Erie is going to lay towards the other double O, potentially looking for a suitcase. I don't know. Hard to predict. Buys the 3, buys a 2 out of the CNO, and then rusts the 2s. Okay. NYC heading down towards the south, buying a 4 train, B&O, heading towards Philly. And with just a 3 train, it's going to run for 80, pays it. B&M, first operation, upgrades Providence, buys a 4, doesn't drop a token, so won't be running into New York. But the difference between the New York run and the Boston run is pretty minimal once Boston's upgraded, so no big loss there. Should see a Reading and Allentown track here. Doesn't elect to take the 2, and that's a little surprising to me, right? If he lays a straight here, he can get NYC down into Lancaster and really lock up the track around New York. Could potentially even get a token in Albany with the PRR, and then, they have exceedingly good map control. I guess in theory, by laying a straight here, you'd be letting the NYNH in. Do they have token money? They do. Okay, so I think that's the fear there. Okay, so that makes sense. Probably would be doing too much of a favor for the NYNH player by laying a straight there. Does token the NYC tile. Not a fan of that. We've talked about that on the channel before. Very cash poor now in the PRR. Runs for 100. CNO is going to upgrade Columbus. Not going to be teleporting. Probably has been blocked from that by this Reading and Allentown track anyways. Pays for 90, so at least Devouring is getting a payout for his investment. And the CNO is actually going to shuffle a train out of the Erie, so we'll be running 2 trains. NYNH gets the upgrade, or not the upgrade, the track lay into Reading and Allentown. So I think the PRR probably played that right, although it is painful that they're not able to link up the NYC and the PRR. But they correctly predicted that the NYNH was going to have something to say about that, so well played. Runs for 100, pays it out, and we are into OR 4.2. Let's see what the Erie does here. Does give himself a route, so not going to be a suitcase. This is decent money for green. You're running for 80, not terrible. But you've locked yourself into this position until brown. So you've totally sacrificed any map control that you might be able to exert with this company. I'm not a fan. I think it's more typical to head to Rochester, and for good reason. The revenue's a little bit less, but you can at least start developing late game runs. You're just painting yourself into a corner. Runs for 40, pays it out. B&O upgrades his home, runs for 100, good. NYC does lay the straight, so we'll get access into Philadelphia, although has not been able to get into Lancaster, running for just 30. This is the fate of the NYC when the NYNH does not cooperate. We've seen this as well. PRR, not going to be upgrading Philly. And when I was first looking at this game, I was very confused by this. But then I realized that the consequence of the Erie laying this track here is that there's no double O's for Philly anymore. So I don't know if this is the next level play from the Erie player, and this is why they did this, just to kind of mess with the B&O, PRR, NYNH, and NYC. Um, I don't know for sure, but that is a consequence of that, and it has pretty big repercussions for the development of New York South. So, a little interesting wrinkle there. PRR pays out for 100. CNO with 2 3 trains is going to run for 160. So, finally getting some decent revenue. Um, but just so much investment in this area of the map that really doesn't get you anywhere later in the game. So still has not made any progress at all towards Lancaster and towards the higher revenue centers on the East Coast. Um, I don't know. I mean, it's good revenue, but he only's got 20% of the company. So do you really care about that revenue? Might as well just withhold. And even if you're running for less, if you withhold, you get 100% of it. I don't know. B&M running his 4 train and not toking Providence. I like that. Running for 100, pays it out. NYNH, last company to operate. Still can't upgrade Philly, so doesn't really have any track delay and runs 400 as well. Actually going to withhold to stay brown. And let's look at operating or priority here. A brown NYNH is a pretty obvious steal target, so why withhold there? You pay it out, you end up in yellow. Yeah, that's an error. So Kelly is going to steal that. And really, NYNH with 260 bucks, decent map position, 3 train, still has a token. Really, why would you not steal it? And this is my criticism of 1830 in the brown zone. It does tend to make games kind of swingy. So before Kelly gets those 4 shares, they're sitting at 9 shares, trailing everybody. Has a dead CNO and a semi-dead Erie. Just really poor map position and not really a factor in the game, I would say. But now, because of a fat finger or just lapse in judgment by Kerkulon, they're kind of right back in the game. They got a prime company um, just because of that brown share rule. So, I mean, it's a factor of 1830. It's something that you know about when you sign up to play, but I do think that it's kind of overpowered. Even worse if you play with the variant where you can buy the IPO in the market in brown. That really makes it swingy. Regardless, Kerkulon is going to buy the B&M. May want to sell out of the NYNH at this point. It's going to be in a very similar situation as Kelly and Devouring, where you have a split presidency and you've lost all control of what that company's actions are. Unlikely that the NYNH would be dumped back, but still some liability that you don't really need in your life. DovBar buying an Erie. There's got to be better companies than that to buy, right? I don't know. Devouring Trey buys the PRR. Kerkulon going back for the B&M. Dump opportunity there for Devouring. And Devouring's going to pass, hoping to stay second in priority, and does. Erie's first up. Going to just run the same track. Nothing else for him to do. B&O trying to just get multiple options into Philly. We'll see if that works out. I think probably the better move would be to upgrade this track and, just secure a run into Lancaster, but not technically under pressure right now for that. Runs for 100. NYC upgrading's home, little increase in revenue up to 40, still probably the least in the game. PRR upgrades Pittsburgh and is going to token Pittsburgh. Okay. I mean, I don't hate the Pittsburgh token in general. You're gonna probably want it eventually, but boy, I wish you still had that NYC, that New York token. Then you would have potential options in Philly for later in the game. B&M, not doing anything, just running for 100, pays out. CNO, finally, it's gonna start heading east and should have pretty easy access into Lancaster. So as much of as I've been hating on this strategy here, may end up doing okay. Runs for 160. We should look at that actually. So Kelly and Devouring Trey are splitting that presidency, and Devouring Trey has priority on him. So Kelly might make the CNO good just in time for Devouring Trey to steal the company. I guess that will be fair play, right? He got a free NYNH. If he loses the CNO, it's kind of net even. I don't mean that seriously, just tongue in cheek. NYNH running for 100 and withholding. Okay. We are into OR 5.2, and we've definitely entered a little bit of a stall on this Poison 4. Um, there are players that could, have the money to buy it, but they're not really in a position to buy the 5 necessarily. I'm looking at Kelly here. If they buy the 4, they do have near 5 train money in the NYNH, but there's a lot of companies that are running in between those two companies that would benefit and just snag those 5s otherwise. So NYC could buy the 4 and shuffle money into the PRR, I suppose. These other two players are not really in a position to do it. So really just kind of stalled here. Might have to wait for the CPR for the 5 trains to come out. Erie is going to run for 80 again, and B&O does get into Lancaster, doesn't token it though. So probably going to lose that token to the C&O. If you're not going to token here, why not run west? I don't know. At least the B&O still has both of his tokens, hasn't thrown them away. NYC heading over to Rochester. Bad news for the Erie company. PRR heading over towards Columbus in Chicago. B&M running for 100, and we are into the C&O. They are not going to token anywhere. Okay. NYNH, no track, and pays it out. We're into stock round 6. Dubbar is going to lead us off, and just buying paying shares for now. Devouring Tray does steal the C&O. Okay, so that was 2 R's in the making. Kelly is going to sell out of the C&O. Devouring Tray is happy about that. Minimal investment in the company, full market, 2-3 trains, $300. Very good deal for him. Buying the B&M, little arbitrage there, IPO to market. Kirkulon is going to immediately sell the B&M, so that kind of eliminates the benefit of buying that share in terms of the arbitrage, and is selling out of the NYH as well. So a lot of brown shares again available for the players to buy. So we'll have to keep an eye on the brown shares. And Kirkulon looks like he's going for the CPR. This will probably be enough to break into the 5s. Dubbar's back up, and we'll be going for the B&O, a little more value, but is going to immediately trash it for the $11. Devouring Tray buying the NYNH brown shares. Could buy up to equal Kelly's presidency, and looks like he does. Okay. So Devouring Tray has done this twice in this game, both times to Kelly, where he just sits on a presidency equal to him. There is some risk in that. The NYNH is operating last, has $400, so not a huge dump opportunity. I think this is probably safer than the C&O move. C&O ended up working out fine for him, and this might too. But there is, liability there. Kelly buying the PRR. And I think, just stepping back for a second, the counterplay to this for Kelly is to deplete the NYNH of all assets if possible. Leave it with no cash, no token. Pay out as much as you can to try and get it out of brown, and then make sure you have priority on devouring to try and dump it back, or at least get him to sell out. It's unfortunate for Kelly that he's right behind Devouring Tray, so this is probably why Devouring Tray is comfortable doing this. But at least by doing that, you might be able to incentivize Devouring to sell out of your company, and then you don't have to worry about a 50-50 split of the revenue. All right, Kirkulon, CPR floating, Dubbar buying a C&O. Not a safe presidency, but looks like nobody's really interested in pressuring Devouring for it. Devouring will actually further sell out of the C&O. Wow. He's playing this game aggressively, really high train liability. We'll see if that comes back to bite him. Going to buy the B&O, paying shares there, fine. Buys it from the IPO instead of the market. So I think he's doing that because he realizes with the market share, he's safe from the dump. So, okay. Kelly also buying an IPO. Devouring still safe. Kelly, on the other hand, probably should have bought that market share. That might force Devouring to sell a paying share. Kirkulon, going to go back and buy an IPO. So still safe. And actually, I think I was reading this wrong. 5 shares with 1 share in the market is not actually safe for Devouring. So ignore what I just said. You need 6 shares with 1 share in the market to be safe with a 2 share holding. Dove bar passing, devouring, buying the NYC. So I think he's just trying to run up a share lead here, doing a pretty good job of it. And no one's really punishing him for it by stealing one of his presidencies. Kirkulon buying a CPR, not quite floated yet. He's going to have to sell some stuff to make that happen. And it's just going to sit on a $400 investment. I cringe every time I see this. We've been seeing this a lot on the channel. It's really damaging to your long-term prospects to lock up so much liquidity into an unfloated company. Erie is stuck and going to just pay out. So we might see a continued stall here since that CPR actually didn't float. NYC gets into Rochester. This is the downside of this Erie strategy, right? Is that you've just sacrificed all this track development. All your opponents are able to develop their routes. They can snag tokens whenever they want, and you're just running the same route. It's a decent route, right? Like $80 is nothing to sneeze at. You got the NYC right next door running for 40, now 60. And it does have that added benefit of shutting down Philly, but I think this is too much cost for those limited benefits. NYC pays out, B&O laying Burlington to break the CPR suitcase before it floats. And B&O is going to pay. I mean, if the CPR had floated for 100 in the last stock round, they would have operated, potentially brought out the 5 before this Burlington track could have been laid. So that's another reason why that CPR just sitting on a 40% investment is not good. B&O paying for 100, buys the 4. Okay, so even though we don't see the CPR float, it looks like the poison 4 will go. And why? He literally cannot buy a 5. All the 5s are going to go. And, just looking at this 5, 5, 5, 6, he's not even going to get a 6 train. Boy. So he's basically guaranteeing that he's going to run a D train in the CPR to buy this 4. And then he's going to be forced to buy the D train, rust his own 4. He's going to end up running 2 D trains because of this? Oh, okay. Yeah, that is bad. PRR running for 100 and not able to buy a 5. We might see devouring withhold for 1 here. And then he's going to be real happy that he has 3 companies, right? He's eliminating his train liability pretty quickly. Withholds, and there's the first 5. Yeah, why not? His second company probably withholds for a 5 too, gets the token in New York. This is looking great for devouring. And all because B&O bought a random 4 train for no reason. All right, withholds, second 5. He's living large. NYNH should get the third 5 here, able to token in Albany, so they're okay. Withholds, and that's the third 5. Do we see the 6 come out right now? Upgrade on the 00. This will open up Philly for the other players. He's going to run and withholds. There's the 6. NYC. He withholds. There's the second 6. So yeah, Kirkulon buys a 4, doesn't get to run his 3. So doesn't even get the benefit of 2 trains, and now has doomed himself to do 2 D trains in companies that really don't have great runs. CPR runs could be miserable. Token dead Albany, token dead Rochester. Even if he gets south, there's nowhere for him to go. He's gonna have to head over here for any hope of runs. B&O runs. Okay, B&O has some potential. Is going to have to token to secure this, but Philly is open for him. Hasn't been token to Lancaster. Has Pittsburgh potentially, so probably needs to token Lancaster here so he doesn't get cut by the C&O. C&O have money? C&O does not have money. Okay, so has a little bit of time to drop both tokens. So this is the only saving grace, is that eventually his D run might be okay, but does he just bankrupt if the D runs come out? Liquidity plus his net worth treasury is not going to be enough for a D train, and he's going to have to contribute $100 for the CPR as well. So yeah, he's in danger of that. This is bewildering, that 4 purchase. That's not good. Upgrades home, so it doesn't even get the Philly upgrade. Not going to token anywhere. Oh no, he does token. He tokens in New York. Okay. Runs for 180, pays it. PRR, somehow trainless. Must have shuffled trains with the NYC? I'm not sure how that happened. I guess he just had a 3 train. I'm not sure. Anyway, does have a 4 train to buy over, so not going to be forced to out-of-pocket an expensive train, but a little bit of train trouble for Dub Bar 2. CNO is going to upgrade Columbus. Okay. I guess that's better than the Lancaster upgrade since you're the only one running Columbus. All 3 brown tiles have been consumed. Runs for 190. Pays it out. That's fine. Does have token money now. B&M running 2 trains, has pretty good runs, 320, and pays it. NYNH running a brand shiny new NY 5 train, and is going to bypass Rochester, it looks like, or at least set up for it. Paying that, so leaving brown, but that's okay. Stock round 7. All right. So if you're someone not named Kirkulon, I think you force this float, even if he doesn't want it. He has enough liquidity that he probably doesn't bankrupt, especially since the B&O is going to get a run. Um, but that's going to eliminate him from the game. He's already eliminated, but it will make it official. And it will rust the other player's 4 trains. So Dubbar doesn't really want that to happen. I think Devouring Tray probably really wants that to happen. He's in the lead, and rusting Dubbar's 4 is going to eliminate that competitor. Kirkulon's dead. Kelly, um, hmm, I guess the liability there is that you might lose in a bankruptcy situation to Kelly depending on how shares are sold. I think that he's probably far enough ahead. He can just focus on paying during this operating round and come out on top. Um, yeah, so I think the move here is to force float the CPR after you've bought the attractive shares. Dubbar is going for the CNO, pressuring that presidency. Devouring's going to have to defend. He does. And he's actually going to sell a B&O too. I think he realizes that that train is going to rust, so fair enough. Kelly going to buy a B&M. Okay. Kirkulon, he needs to buy Peng shares. He should absolutely not be floating the CPR. The CPR float is going to be very painful for him. So don't know why we're seeing that. Dubbar buying the CNO. Still pressuring for that presidency. Devouring defends pretty easily. If nobody else buys that share, could end up with a 4-4 split. Kelly's passing on a ton of cash. Kirkulon also passing, so investing further in an unfloated company and sitting on cash. Okay, maybe this player's just giving up. Dubbar is selling out of the CNO. Devouring is safe and buying the B&M. Devouring goes for paying NYC. Just doing a little bit of trashing, potentially seeing that we're risking bankruptcy here and just opening up a wider net worth lead. Yes, and Kelly does go back and float the CPR, so Kirkulon doesn't get a break there. Devouring has plenty of shares left to buy and is going to be widening his share lead. Looks like everybody else is just passing, and Devouring Tray is happy enough to just start running away with this. Going to trash the Erie though. Okay. Does still want to buy shares, I assume. I'm going to buy the CPR. Why? CPR is terrible. Okay, well, whatever. Kirkulon's up. Last run of this 4 train, I have to assume. Going to run for 180 and withhold it. I think that'll probably be enough to ensure he doesn't bankrupt. He was on the razor's edge, but his liquidity should be just enough now. He is going to have to contribute $100 here, but he's going to have to sell out super heavily when these D trains come out. NYC, hoping to get into Pittsburgh, it looks like. Withholding also has train liability, reasonable. Erie is going to token, and I think this is just so he can run both of his trains in case someone bankrupts. Okay. Kirkulon is buying the 4 train and getting the exchange. Okay, so I forgot that he was going to get the exchange at least on one of them. That saves him a little bit of money. So definitely not bankrupting, but also definitely still losing. PRR upgrades Philly and is able to double tap New York for 260. CNO gets the Lancaster token, so too late for the B&O. B&O's runs have been cut, not so much because of this token, but more because of how this was upgraded. Cannot run through Baltimore into the west. CNO pays for 230. B&M is pretty much done for the game. Just going to be sitting on 220, it looks like, for the rest of the game. NYNH split presidency. Still working on trying to get past Rochester. Pays for 220. Erie heading up towards the offboard will have a decent run once he's able to link up with all these double O's. B&O, going to have to buy another D train here. So selling everything as expected and is now dead. PRR gets into Columbus and by that into Chicago. Devouring on the CNO. Just laying some track. NYC. Somehow this company still doesn't have a train. I think we're waiting for the D trains to come out still. Is going to sell pretty heavily, so also probably eliminated. CPR gets into Albany and is running a D train for 90. Hate to see it. B&M stable. NYNH probably also pretty stable. Unsuccessful in bypassing Rochester other than getting to Pittsburgh, but the NYC player Dubbar foresaw that and has already token there to block those runs. We are into 7.3, and at this stage in the game, I think it's not a whole lot left. I mean, yeah, Devouring Trey has a massive share lead. He's going to have to sell down because he wasn't able to convince Kelly to stay yellow. I guess it's not impossible that they withhold to do that, but it benefits Devouring Trey probably a lot more than it does Kelly. So if Kelly is trying to win, maybe he shouldn't do that. In terms of revenue, Erie's revenue is going to be increasing, but it looks like the NYNH and the B&M are stuck for the rest of the game with basically matching revenues. So no way for Kelly to come back with that. CNO's revenue, I think there's probably not a whole lot of room for growth there. So Erie may eventually equal the CNO. I don't think it's going to exceed it, or at least not by much. And Devouring's already $600 ahead. So I think he just wins this game. These two players are done. It doesn't matter that they have D runs. It's not going to be enough to come back. So let's just skip this operating round. Look at the map. Doesn't look like a whole lot is changing here. No way to really bypass Pittsburgh with this upgrade and the double O that does not upgrade. So the map's been cut in half. Erie was able to get into the offboard, but really no further track development possible. So yeah, I think the map is stagnant in terms of tokens. NYC with one, CPR with a ton of them, but no place to lay them. B&O has one, Erie has one. B&O could be, I guess, annoying and mess with the PRR a little bit. I don't think that's going to change anything, and the PRR is already eliminated, so wouldn't change the outcome. Let's just skip here, see how many shares Devouring Trey ends up with. So 18 shares, tied with Kelly, still $700 lead, and the bank has $8,000 in it, so probably two sets of ORs left. Not in position to be dumped upon, so nobody's going to be able to change up this game state. Let's skip through this set of ORs because the track is really not anything exciting to talk about. And we can just look at the spreadsheet here. Devouring versus Kelly, the two contenders. First of all, stable lead for Devouring. Looks like his revenue has been, basically the same as Kelly's. Dubbar is catching up, but way too far behind to, just make $100 more each round and expect to win. This stock round, Devouring can't be dumped on. These two players can be buying paying shares. Devouring's going to, I'm sure, adjust his stock portfolio slightly. But really, this game's over. So just confirm that Devouring still has 18 shares. Everybody has 18 shares except for Kirkulon. Looking at the revenues, Kelly and Devouring, 250 for Devouring, 270 for Kelly. So Kelly does have a slight advantage there. These two are going to net each other out. In terms of the D runs, Devouring has 3 shares here, 2 share advantage on Kelly. Kelly has a 1 share advantage here, so that favors Devouring also, although the NYC shares are slightly higher revenue. So I guess, we're just kind of nitpicking here, but Devouring's got this. We're going to skip to the end and see that he wins by a pretty comfortable margin. A lot of track was built and just too little too late. None of it came to anything. I think the B&O run probably got pretty good by the end here because he's able to get into all this stuff over here. We can look at that. B&O is running for 450 most of the game, yep, but that's not enough to win. So congrats to Devouring. And we'll be seeing them again in the second round of this tournament. Thanks for watching.